What's up, Digital Business Evolution? Welcome back to the show. I have an incredible guest here with you today, and I'm really excited for you to dive in. If you are listening while driving, I'm going to tell you you're going to want to listen to this episode again because I saw this incredible man speak in person recently, and I took so many notes. It turned into actually taking pictures of his slides and creating an entire photo album of pictures just that he was sharing because I couldn't write fast enough. So today we have Scott Glassman here, who is a licensed psychologist and author of Happier You, a 7-week program to transform negative thinking into positivity and resilience. He's a clinical associate professor and director of Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. His 7-week wellness program, A Happier You, has been featured on SiriusXM and NPR. Dr. Glassman has adopted a Happier You for athletes as part of his Major League Soccer pilot program. He's also a member of the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers and has been a speaker and trainer at many national and regional organizations, including the American Psychological Association. Dr. Glassman is a periodic contributor to the health section of the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he and his wife live in none other than New Jersey with their school-age son. So we've got a Jersey guy in the house with me. Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Jess, thank you so much for having me on the show, and it's a real pleasure. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
So Scott and I actually were introduced just a couple of weeks ago. It was probably about 3 weeks ago at this point. I was at my mastermind with my mentor, and Scott was one of the incredible speakers that my mentor brought in. And not only did he come in and just breathe life into us for a few hours, he actually sat with us the entire 3-day experience that we had at our mastermind. So you and I got to sit at lunch together one day and sort of dive into some of our crazy, stupid ideas, as I like to call them. And one of them for both of us had to do with book writing, which I have the copy of Happier You right here with me, which is your first book. So tell us a
Right,
little bit
yeah.
about how you or why you started this book journey. Why'd you want to put it down into a book?
Well, I've always wanted to write a book, and so it really was a dream come true to take a program that I had developed that had been helping so many people at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, this 7-week happiness program, and really develop it into a self-paced version because there are many people who couldn't access our course there. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to make it this kind of personal journey that somebody could go on and take it as slowly as they wanted to. So that became the genesis of the book. I happened to be at the American Psychological Association convention, and met with a publisher there, and they were really interested in it. And then it began this year-long journey of writing the book, which was phenomenal in shaping the ideas of the different exercises that compose each of these 7 pathways to happiness. So such a rewarding journey. If you love to write, I mean, just the act of creation in and of itself, knowing whatever you're creating through words is going to change somebody's life.
Mm,
If if only for a moment, or maybe for a week, or maybe longer than that.
yeah. Something that I love so much is just your relatability and your approachability. And when you were speaking to us in the room, it just felt like we were hanging out, except you have
Yeah.
this brilliance of knowledge and experience to share with all of us. And so I have dove into the book. I've been flying through the book, and something that I love about this book, and of course, y'all, we will be linking this in the show notes. But what I love about this book is number one, it's science backed, which is really, really cool. Number two, you pack it with stories, and they're not just your stories, but they're stories of other people. So I feel very seen and heard in different stories inside this book. And then the two other things that I really, really love, because I'm a teacher. Number one is you have sort of, I say this in quotes, forced reflections. So there's moments in here where you have us reflect, and then you have, of course, my favorite tangible exercises and activities for us to do. So while it is a read along book, I'm finding it's almost like a workbook that I could pick
Yeah.
up at any time and kind of open any page and read exactly what I need for that day. Was that intentional?
It absolutely was intentional. And I love that you see it as a menu of
Mm,
options. So there may be a day where you especially need gratitude, more of a gratitude focus in your life. So you would potentially turn to week 3 and dive into a gratitude spot exercise. Or maybe it's a lack of lightness and humor and playfulness that you're finding in your day or in your week. And so that, propels you into week 4. It is probably a good idea for people to follow the course from week 1 all the way through week 7, and then begin to select what they need from the exercises as they go. And the reason I say that is it's an inside out approach to happiness. So it begins with this base idea of using mindfulness, using the power of our attention to learn how to expand good moments, to really bring the good things that happen to us closer, and to look at them like you're turning over a diamond and you're looking at all the beautiful facets of a diamond being that moment, and getting from that all of the good feelings, the good meanings, and good possibilities for your future. If you can master that week 1 skill, all of the other subsequent skills in personal strengths and gratitude and lightness and enjoyable, meaningful activities, kindness and love, they will build off of that positive attentional shift that you're learning to work with each day. And I
Yeah.
think it can be really incredibly powerful.
Yeah. There are so many directions I want to go right now. I have
Yeah.
questions about psychology. I have so many questions, but can you take us back just for a moment to the journey that brought you to sort of seeking out happiness?
Yeah, and I'd like to maybe go all the way back like over 30 years ago,
Please bring
and
us
tell you
there.
about an experience I had as a kid. I'll never forget it. I was 13, and I'm actually waiting with dread for my father to come home from his office hours as a doctor. Now, my father grew up during World War II. He served as an officer in the army. He was just as facile at building a closet as he was at delivering a baby, and has kind of this forged in fire, larger than life person to me. And quite honestly, his sense of mastery and knowledge in the world was like, could blow you away. It was very controlled, very intense, very stern, and a great sense of humor as well. But that night I was really worried because we had been studying together for a math test, a 7th grade math test, for a week. And his preferred way of helping me study was writing problems down on napkins, dinner napkins, and I would solve them. And I thought everything was going great. Like we both were feeling confident. So he breezes through the door that night. I know what question's coming. He goes by the kitchen table, hangs up his tan overcoat, comes right back and says, "So, did you get the test back yet?" And I had it with me. I knew I had to show him. I slid it across the table, and that 65 circled boldly at the top just kind of was an imprint. And I watched as a sense of disappointment really spread over his face. I felt this corresponding sinking feeling too, as I noticed how upset he was becoming. And I don't think he said anything. I think he got up from the table and just walked away. And the reason I'm telling you this is that even though you may have grown up in like whatever, a strict achievement oriented house or not, at most times in our lives, we come to associate happiness with an outcome. And I
Yes.
think I learned in more of a negative way then that happiness was tied to a test score. It was an outcome. And choose your outcome, whether it's job title, whether it's winning or losing at a sport, whether it's the number of likes that you have on a post. Choose whatever metric you have.
Yeah.
The hyper focusing on outcomes becomes, in my opinion, a number one obstacle to happiness. It really prevents us from living more fully in the present moment and really enjoying the process of becoming, really enjoying the unfinished magnificence
Yeah.
of who we are.
Do you think that there's any bearing on someone who is so outcome oriented? It's like a chicken or the egg question. So, someone who's so outcome oriented, striving for that happiness, fulfillment, validation, permission, right? Love, worthiness. Do you find that they're often perfectionists or vice versa? Do you find that they have mental health issues or vice versa? Or are they not related at all? Because that is me. I was always chasing awards and accolades, and I love my parents. And of course, they do the best that they can with what they know at the time. And we had a running joke in my family, which deep seated subconscious, I don't really think it was that funny, but the running joke was if my brother or I came home with like a 96 on a test, they would say, "Well, what happened to the other 4 points?" Like jokingly. But here I am, 38 years of trying to undo perfectionism.
So perfectionism mental health challenges, trauma, all of that I think can magnify this outcome mentality where we're defining our worth constantly almost by external metrics,
Yeah.
by like, how am I doing in the reflection of others' eyes?
Yeah.
And I think the core of that is that we're on this, it's been described as a hedonic treadmill. So we're
Mm.
on this treadmill and
Yep.
we're going to the next milestone, the next achievement, and
Joke's
that
on
feels
you.
good. Yeah, it feels good for a second, but then you're on to, okay, I need more. I need to reach higher and get to the next point and get to the next point in order to fill a kind of gap, a void,
Yeah.
um, to replace that valued experience in progressing and getting better, in
What a
enjoying
great
the
visual,
moment.
though. Yeah, the visual of the treadmill, because I always talk about, I call it don't judge your carrot, right? The thing that you're sort of chasing after. And if you've ever been out for a run, you kind of tell yourself, I'm going to get to the end of the street, and you get there, you still have gas in the tank. So you keep going. I'm going to get to the fire hydrant. You have gas in the tank, you keep going. And we're always moving the finish line. But this visual is such a shift for me of actually picturing you on a treadmill with that carrot hanging in front of you. And I said joke's on you because you're running to the next thing, but the reality is you're actually not going anywhere. You're not
And
moving forward.
you're not. And to step off the treadmill for many people, it takes a
Mm,
lot of practice of just feeling complete. I was practicing this today in my car ride to work. I was just wanted to get into a state of utter completeness. And so what does that mean?
yeah, what does that
Just
mean?
the idea that, you know what, I am filled with all of the gifts of life as they are right now, as I'm on this drive to work, through my family, through the sunshine, through the air I'm breathing, through being in touch with my breath, that there is in this moment, and I had to say this to myself. I think we often have to say this to ourselves, that there's nothing more that I need in my life, whether business success or job status or whatever it is, to be utterly complete. And there's just such, sometimes if you're able to access that place of completeness, there's such a sense of relief, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I can stop striving and feeling the anxiety of
Yeah.
not having something else.
But
And
what
that,
about
yeah.
for the person who's listening who's doing the eye roll right now going, "Yeah, but Scott, I don't have that stuff yet. I'm not there yet." And
Mm.
we talk a lot at this podcast and in our business about the concept of be, do, have. So, yeah, it must be nice. It's so easy for you. You were driving to your job. Well, Scott, I don't have a job, right? Or you have your family at home whom loves you. And maybe I just got out of a relationship and it didn't go the way that I wanted. So, how do you sort of circumvent the conversation that someone might be having in their head right now saying, well, that's great. I'm very happy for you that you were able to reach completeness, and
Mm.
wholeness in your car. I'm in a dark place. I'm struggling with something. Is it fake it till you make it? Stick the post-it notes up? Talk the affirmations into the mirror? How do we sort of get ourselves out of it when it doesn't feel that we're there?
Well, the first thing I want to say about that, because I think we've all experienced dark places in our life like that,
Mhm.
where we're experiencing hopelessness, helplessness, feeling like, there's really nothing I can do in order to change my situation, asking for help. And yeah, as a psychologist, reaching out to a licensed mental health professional, getting help, is so, so important. We don't need to do this all by ourselves.
Yeah.
There's so many self-help pathways out there. Of course, if that can be wonderful for you, take advantage of that. But there are times when we just need to ask for a guiding hand. And the other thing I want to say about that is, I think we all have a kind of source, right? There's a source of something beyond our present situation, which is caring and loving and good, and has within it, in the most simplest of ways, whether that's being in contact with a higher power, with nature, with something that's readily accessible, going to the breath and just observing, being in a place of being that, just a compassionate observer to your pain,
Yeah.
I think is an important way of cultivating a sense of acceptance and completeness, even in the less ideal circumstances of our lives and the world.
Yeah.
And so there are many different, I think, definitions of completeness, right, that we can bring in. to the picture
Yeah.
around that.
Do you think the definition of completeness changes for people as they grow and sort of evolve?
Absolutely, absolutely, because you may not have been spiritual in your life before, but maybe you have a spiritual experience, and now that is suddenly a nourishing stream in your existence. You may go through different phases of life where you are now you have different goals, different values, different kinds of dreams, and so completeness really can draw from many, many different aspects of who we are and where we are in
Yeah.
our lives. But I would say every moment can be its own sense of completeness, and we can be really reborn in each new moment.
Yeah. Do you have some tools or like buzzwords to help someone find or sit with completeness? Like, for example, is it being present? Turning off distractions. Like, how do we find
How do we get to that
completeness? Yeah.
place?
How do we get there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. For me, and for many other people, it's focusing on the breath.
Hmm.
We always have access in a vivid way to the sense of breathing. And even if we're distracted by thinking or emotions or what we have to do in the next hour or what happened to us in the past, if we can gently bring ourselves back through this mindfulness of breathing practice, it's a great way of coming back to the here and now. If we have to do that, John Kabat-Zinn, who's one of my favorite people in the world because he brought mindfulness into our collective consciousness and really has helped us evolve with mindfulness, talks about if you need to pull your attention back 1,000 times, it's the act of working with your attention that way that matters. It's bringing it back to the breath. So often that counts. So that's one way. Sensation. So if you access any of your sensory pathways, sight, sound, taste, smell, that's a great way of rooting yourself
Hmm.
in the present moment and taking away necessarily the negative meanings. If you're feeling something cold in your hands, you're holding something cold and you're squeezing it, just that sensation can take away the story that may be causing you to feel really upset and really down or really, really hopeless. So that ground, you're kind of at ground zero, that 0 point of being
Yeah.
is a place then that we can pivot from into more higher levels of positive emotions, higher
Yeah.
frequencies of positive feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody over the last few years. I believe the collective has sort of been woken up. I see it almost as we've been living inside this snow globe, for lack of a better term. And it was like the snow globe got totally like shaken and rattled, and people started to become more aware of, oh my gosh, I don't even like this job that I'm in, or I've been sleepwalking through life, or I've been chasing after something that I don't even think that I really want, but I thought that I needed to want it because the person next to me is, or I'm married to someone I don't care for anymore. Right. And so what I've noticed just with clients and friends and peers over the last few years is sort of this awakening and this awareness of the fact that we've kind of been sleepwalking through life. But what's interesting is when you bring back or when you talk about these very simple tools that are within us, like our senses or taking breath. When Mike and I decided to leave New York City in August of 2020, I've been meditating and doing breath work for almost a decade. And when we left New York and we were living in the RV and we were probably in the middle of Idaho somewhere, I started to recognize that it was the first time in my life I felt like I was ever breathing.
Wow. Yeah.
And I felt like I could also hear my thoughts. And that was terrifying because here I am, someone who meditates and journals and does all the things, and Tony Robbins this and Joe Dispenza that. And for the first time in 35, 36 years, I could all of a sudden hear my thoughts. And I realized that, and I don't know if anyone else can experience this or has, the sheer noise, like literally the noise of New York City and the light pollution and the energy, the frequency in New York City had been sort of numbing me out. And all of a sudden, like, stuff started to bubble to the surface. And what was once easy to get or find, happiness, gratitude, became a process for me. And it became something that I had to work for. And I'm so grateful for that chapter. It lasted about 18 months, and I'm happy to be on the other side of it because it was really, really, really hard. But it was a beautiful gift because it taught me how to practice being in the process as opposed to taking the process for granted. You talk a lot about gratitude, positivity, affirmations. And I am a girl who had sticky notes up on my mirror decades ago, working through an eating disorder in my 20s. Like, I mean, I've done the affirmations and the sticky notes, and I truly believe that they don't work because you can read something as many times as you want, but if you don't believe it, it's not going to change anything. And if you're anything like me, maybe you even have those sticky notes up and you start to not even see them after a while. You just blur them out while you're looking in the mirror. They become almost, they're in the way. And so you avoid them. How do you navigate? Like, what is the difference? Because you talk a lot in the book about gratitude. So is it just like, okay, write three things down every day that you're grateful for? Or like, how do we actually feel the gratitude? How do we feel it in our body to make a change?
I think it comes back to the questions that you ask yourself when you're in a state of gratitude. And I agree with you. I think that just writing down three things, like three short things that you're grateful for at the end of each day, that may help a little,
Sure.
but it also may not be as impactful because there's not a deeper meaning that you've assigned to those three things that you've written down.
Well, and
So I
sometimes it
would,
feels like a to-do list.
yeah, it feels like it's some another demand that's
Yeah.
placed on you,
Yeah. And that's
and
exhausting.
exhausting, right? And to work around that, maybe just kind of reducing it to what is something that I'm considering a gift in my life, and maybe not even writing it down. But I'm a big believer in, I talk a lot about this in the book, of working with your attention retrospectively. So going back over the course of your day and picking out some experience that filled you in some way, and then asking yourself questions about that. Why did it feel so good? I made my 13-year-old breakfast this morning, and that was one of the experiences that I today in my streaming that I went back to and pulled back into the present moment and said, why did I feel good about that? It's because it helped me be a good dad
Yeah.
for him. And cooking him a hot breakfast was something that I had promised him that I would do as he started seventh grade and getting up earlier in the morning. And the idea that now feeling grateful that I could have an opportunity to be a good dad to him in that way brought so much more meaning and emotional resonance in with
Mhm.
that experience that just writing it down on a piece of paper made my son breakfast. Okay, on the wall.
Right.
Um, not the same thing, not the same thing at all. And so if you're, and I want to offer a few questions. So one could be, what does that mean about me in a good way? Another could be, what does that mean positively about my future? Like, how does that spark me
Yeah.
going forward? Like, and for me, the answer is, oh, I can be a great dad in other ways. And I can bring more of my awareness to how I want to spend even more quality time with him and really spend more time playing sports with him and all of those things. So it's the questions I would say, Jess, that we ask ourselves that
Mm.
really can expand the experience. If you are going to journal, then in addition to writing that down, put the why in. Like
Yes.
spend a little bit of time saying, why is it that I'm feeling fulfilled by this? It will really increase the scope of the impact
I
on your
love
well-being.
that.
Yeah,
I love that. The quality of your questions results in the quality of your life, right? I mean, we say the same thing in
absolutely.
business.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
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 I love that. The idea, it's so small and so simple, but the idea of just asking why also starts to probably uncover things within you that you maybe didn't even notice. So it's interesting. You said, I had promised my son he was going to get hot breakfast going to seventh grade, and I did it, and it made him happy, and it's time we can spend together. And my head also went to the other side, which is you honored your word and you stayed in
Mm.
integrity with what your promise was. And so if we want to build self-confidence, if we want to build self-trust, it's doing that. It's honoring your word. So of course that feels good because you did something you said you were going to do.
And that comes back to values, right? So just having a great awareness of what are my core values? And I've been
Yes.
doing more and more of this lately of I call it the VPS in the book, the values positioning system. So the more we can be in touch with what we care about, family, faith, creativity, whatever it is that moves us, that drives us, that's a source of who we want to be in the world, that will steer our actions and that will steer our emotions and that will steer our thoughts. in
Mm.
such a way that it creates this kind of positive gravity. So when you talked about leaving the city and really hearing your thoughts for the first time, it really made me think about, wow, like you were reorienting your life from a values driven perspective, which enhanced that kind of shift with wanting new circulations of
Yeah.
thoughts, feelings, and choices around that value. So in the morning, I'd like to touch base with, okay, what values do I want to live out today?
Yeah.
And they could be different each day.
I
And then
love
at the
that.
end of the day, spotlighting, okay, how did I fulfill my deepest values, or didn't I? If I missed something, is there an opportunity that I'd like to work on in the days to come, in the weeks to come? And I think that can keep us on course, right? That can keep us like our why right in front of us, why
Yeah.
we're here. And we
Sure.
lose that. We lose that so easily with our distractions and being pulled in all these different directions.
Yeah. It's really cool to have an exercise like that, though, morning, night, whenever, where it's not performance based for the accolade, for the gold star, but it's more just awareness based. And then you're the driver of the ship, you're the writer of the story, you're the creator of the painting. So we get to make little tweaks moving forward if we don't like what we see or what we're doing. And it's without that judgment of self that all of a sudden you're not worthy or you're bad. It's like, no, you just maybe didn't honor your word, or you didn't like how that action made you feel. So let's just make a little change tomorrow.
I love that idea because you're talking about being the ultimate creator of your life, and
Yeah.
that you get to choose what comes into your world.
Right.
And sometimes we need to be compassionate with ourselves that we're not seeing that, or in a place in our life where we're disconnected from
Hmm.
what we care about most, or we don't know, or we simply haven't done a kind of that inner work to look at, what are the three things I care about most, and how will that reshape my life.
Yeah.
So
I think that's scary stuff to look at for a lot of people. It's easier to
it is.
ignore it, and we're just in that rat race of going and moving and chasing that carrot on the treadmill. I want to shift gears for a second. This could be a very ignorant question. I will take the fall for the audience because if I'm wondering it, I think other people are wondering it too. Can you just explain to me the difference between, if there is, psychology and positive psychology?
So um, you can think of psychology as encompassing positive psychology. Positive psychology is defined as the study of human flourishing, of the way we can live in the most optimal way possible. Traditional perspectives from psychology tend to look at how can we kind of fix what's wrong. It's pathology driven. So if what's the diagnosis, and then how can we help somebody with that specific diagnosis, maybe correct some of their negative core beliefs that are contributing to depression or anxiety. And so for the longest time, psychology has been focused on um, fixing what's wrong. And what positive psychology does is shifts the focus a bit toward the fact that nothing has to be wrong for us to understand what are the peak levels of existence and
Mm,
self-actualization that we can reach in our lives. And that has been always like so refreshing to me.
yeah.
And both can work in concert. There are times when we do need to look at, what are the sources of my difficulties in my relationship, or my problems at work, or in any other domain of life, and we need to be thoughtful about that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But sometimes we neglect the other side. Like, how can we be strengths driven? What are my core strengths, and how can I let them sing more into the world? How can I
Yeah.
give them voice? And I think it's always been so personally satisfying for me to give voice and help others give voice to their inherent strengths
Mm.
and the best parts of themselves. And there is a kind of full, now that you have a full range of the instrument of human experience, like what we can learn from the negative side of life, and then the notes that we can play in the higher echelons of the scale.
Mm. I'm seeing, we have a lot of health and fitness professionals that work with us and follow along on the podcast. And I'm just seeing this kind of correlation between, it's the idea of like, we're healthy and we're strong, but also we love to optimize that health and take it to the next level and go get the extra IV and the vitamin B and the, right. It's like taking it to the edge, or seeing how far you can take it to the edge. So you're good, everything's good, you're healthy and it's great. It's how can we amplify the things that are doing so well and are working for us? Is that kind of true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's going well is the first question a positive psychologist would probably ask
Awesome.
versus, what's wrong? Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that as a starting point. And we can get into what's wrong, and there's plenty of time for that.
Right.
And then
And
oftentimes, yeah.
yeah,
Go
what's
ahead.
going well is not let's avoid what might be wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. And one of the misunderstandings about positive psychology is that it minimizes, denies, or devalues negative experience, stress, problems, trauma. Absolutely not. What it
Yeah.
does is it seeks to create more of a balance between our best version of ourselves and then what's wrong. And there's a lot we can learn from stressful things, and that's how we build resilience, right? If we had no
Sure.
stress in our lives, if we had nothing negative that ever happened to us, how could we ever grow? How could we ever learn about ourselves?
Yeah. It's so interesting too, because it's like if we didn't have emotion, would it be negative? Would we perceive it as something as positive or negative if we didn't have the ability to have those emotions? And I don't know how animals are because we can't fully tell, but sometimes they seem a bit more neutral about things, right? They don't have that decision making or the reasoning that we humans get to have. And I think that's a big difference between us and animals, other animals, is the ability to reason, to foreshadow, to forecast, right? And so we get caught in our own heads and create our own spirals of meaning around things due to the emotion that we feel and then like the label that we put on it.
That's right. Yeah. And emotion, you said it perfectly. Emotion creates meaning
Hmm.
in the experience. And then it can become an upward spiral if
Yep.
that meaning and emotion is positive and it builds on itself, or it can become a negative downward spiral if it's a negative feeling, sadness, frustration, anger, that leads to more of those types of thoughts and more stagnation in our choices. And then
Yeah.
we kind of go down that rabbit hole. So being really attentive to where, I love the question you're leading us to, Jess, and that is, where is my emotion taking me? And
Ooh.
where and what thoughts is it bringing in? And is there another way of looking at this situation where I can, you know, really switch that into something that is more realistic, more adaptive, more
Mm.
helpful? Am I
Do you
just
have a tool for
operating on
that?
old scripts?
Yeah, do you have a specific tool for that? Or is it just sitting down and really sitting with those questions of, am I operating off of old scripts? Is this fact or fiction, right? Is this true or is this how I feel? Because we have a lot of people, most of our audience are business builders. And
Right.
so, with a business, when you launch something and it doesn't go as planned or as desired, a lot of times our clients, myself included, will make that mean something about themselves or mean something about their offer or their pricing. And we go into these negative spiral loops, which of course snowball. And then that's the energy you have behind it. So people don't necessarily want to buy. And now you're in this like really crazy loop. So is there something when you're catching yourself, or is it simply asking yourself, where is this going with this emotion right now?
I think it's asking yourself, where am I being led? But it's also asking ourselves, does this make sense? If I really look at, this means that I'm a terrible business owner, a terrible entrepreneur. What, first of all, define what's that label mean? If I had to define that, would I meet all the criteria in my mind of what a terrible entrepreneur is? Probably not if you listed all of the criteria, and maybe you're only seeing a small sample size of an event of events that have happened related to your business that may not be so positive. That process of really putting that thought on trial, so to speak,
Yeah.
you get to see all of the other evidence that's on the positive side that you may have been ignoring. So I think that's a really wonderful way of not letting that thought get away with starting that downward spiral from an
Yeah.
emotional standpoint.
The label that you're talking about here reminds me of the exercise you had us do in the room where you popped a picture up onto the screen. But before you put the picture up, you said, I'm going to put a picture up of on the screen, and you're going to want to say a word in your head because this thing that I'm putting up has a label. And we in society have labeled this thing. And what I want you to do is avoid saying the name of the thing in your head. Try not to continue to say the label. And so you could have literally put anything up. It could have been a pencil, it could have been a tree, and you put a picture up, and it was this gorgeous, majestic elephant. And so the second that you put it up, I'm going, not elephant, not elephant, not elephant, right? Like my brain is like, no, no, no. So what I decided to do was what you just said. I started to look around the screen for anything other than said, I won't say the word elephant, right? So I'm looking now and I'm like, okay, there's grass and there's sand and it's brown and I'm looking, and there's palm trees, and I'm so avoiding the
Right.
elephant that I'm just picking up
Yeah.
color and texture. And
Yeah.
then you had a share at the end. And as people were going around the room, some people in the room were picking up emotion, and they were creating stories of, okay, it's not elephant, but this thing has happiness in its eyes or sadness, or where did it just come from? Who is it with? And so by not focusing on the label that is, we were able to sort of see other things that we maybe wouldn't have seen before.
Yeah, to see the broader context,
Yeah.
and which can be very hard
It was
when our
so
attention,
hard.
it's
Yeah.
so hard, right? When we're pinned to uh, the judgment,
Yeah.
right? Judgment helps us feel safe, secure, organized, have clarity, and yet at the same time, it closes off possibilities of other perceptual experiences. And so it can be a really helpful exercise to practice not attaching a certain judgment or thought to things that you experience during your day,
Mm.
or interactions with others, other people, events that happen. See what happens, just as an experiment. Do
Yeah.
you find yourself really more open to sounds, uh, sights, colors,
Yeah.
sensations, emotions that otherwise would have been closed off? Because, oh, yep, that's that, and that's that, and that's that. And I'm going here, I'm going there, and I'm going right. If we get out of that kind of structure it almost like we're going back to being children, like you're accessing the our child's mind, which I talk about in the book as being a really important basis of well-being and happiness. Yeah.
What is it in a child's mind that they have or do kind of default to that we feel maybe sometimes adults shut off a little bit?
Delight,
Ooh.
delight and awe, and just unfiltered joy when good things happen. There seems
Yeah.
to be a direct on the nerve relationship with experience that gets a little bit muddled as we grow older and
Yeah.
as we have these cognitive lenses that come in between that core essence. And I believe we at our essence we are love,
Yeah.
we are hope, we are gratitude, we are naturally in awe
Yeah.
of what's around us in discovery and in curiosity. We
Mm-hmm.
To get back to that takes a little bit of that delabeling work that you and I just talked about.
Yeah.
But there's lots of ways to get in touch. Just playing,
Yeah.
just whether it's a board game or whether it's an adult coloring book or whether it's playing with your nieces or nephews or whatever way you can access being um, relieving yourself of the felt perceived demands of
Yes.
adult uh, responsibility,
Yeah. That burden.
adulting. Yeah.
Yeah. The adulting. It's interesting because even when you say more play, more curiosity, and I was a teacher, so that's exactly what it is. They're just curious about everything, kids. It's awesome. That's why they're the best teachers, because they ask the best questions. And half the time I didn't have the answers. I'm like, I don't know. We have to look that up. This is awesome, right? It's so exciting. But when you say that a lot of times to an adult, I can even feel it in my body. Yeah, but Scott, I'm busy. Like, I don't have time for that. That's
I don't
cute.
have time for play.
I don't have time for
Yeah.
play. Like, that's really cute. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got work to do. People are counting on me. And then the other side of it with curiosity, I feel, at least in my experience for many, many years, ego got in the way, where ego said, yeah, but Jess, you're supposed to know that. Or Jess, you're going to look dumb if you admit that you don't know that. Or you're an adult. Why would you be curious about something like that? And so I know for me, I almost squashed that play and curiosity down for so long, only until recently when I was like, something is off. There's a missing piece. I don't feel fulfilled. And then I started to uncover what it was. And it was that. It was hobbies and play and curiosity and newness. We're in this world. It's so beautiful of I'm always learning, taking courses, and I love that. And I love being a student and personal development and all the books and things, but also where is just the newness outside of what I do in my everyday life and my business? And so taking art classes and playing with, using my hands again and getting dirty. And, when Mike and I would hike, it's like, let's actually dig, like build things. And you just kind of move away from that unless that's your avenue, your niche, or your industry. So I think there's something really beautiful about actually being a beginner again. And I don't know if it's true, but do you find that some of the joy and happiness and laughter which you talk about does come from new experiences?
Absolutely. And on the other side of that, if we stick to the idea that we just don't have enough time for it, my business is asking too much of me, I'll be taking away from something more valuable, uh, that can lead to burnout, right? And if we're burned out, how effective are we going to be in our jobs, with our families, with our own self-care?
Yeah.
So we can see play and being a child again in beginner's mind and cultivating that as a way that we are maintaining passion for the less fun stuff in life, with our businesses and with our relationships and all the other things, the hassles of daily life that we need to get through. Makes I think it makes it much more tolerable because we can keep it in a better perspective,
Yeah.
that, like, we and why are we here? Are we
Mm.
here to work? Are we here also to enjoy, to frolic, to play, to learn, to be excited, to be enamored, to be in awe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to create, right? I
And to
mean,
create.
yeah,
Right.
create community and create impact and create legacy and create meaning and all of it. And so create love, like you said, which I love. So can we talk for a moment about your orange method?
Yeah, absolutely. So the orange method is this idea where, if you picture good moments in your life in a stream, like each of those good moments is like an orange, with a peel around it. And certainly they're passing by in the stream of our experience, and we can acknowledge it. Oh, that's a good moment. That was something nice that someone said to me. That was a great meal that I had. That was a really great moment with my partner. And that's fine. But what would happen if you took the orange that's passing along the stream and you took it out of the stream and you brought it closer to yourself? And you ask some of the questions that we've already talked about here. Why am I feeling good? What are the good feelings that are going along with that good conversation, that compliment, that wonderful meal? As with each question we ask, we're opening the orange. We're getting into the essence of the juices of
Mm.
the moment that we're expanding, right? The full breadth of its pleasure, joy, meaning, possibility. And that's a way, that orange method is a way we can completely reshape our attentional habits. I think happiness is a triumph of attention, that if we're able to habitually pull those moments out and stay with them and invite them in and explore them, we are in a much better position to create enduring well-being.
Yeah. I don't know if this was by design. It probably was. But the orange to me, once you peel it open, like an actual orange, when you peel it open and you get the juices on your fingers, it stays around longer. It lingers,
Right.
right?
Yep. We are, by paying attention to it, by asking questions, by creating meaning and context, and bringing it back from maybe a moment that happened, 9 a.m. and now it's 5 p.m., but you're bringing that back into the present moment. You're encoding that more deeply into your memory. You are creating new neural connections that didn't exist before around that moment. And so the fragrance of the orange, the juices, and that staying with you as you're describing, is this kind of, um, carrying the effect forward
Yeah.
and it will draw in other moments, and you'll want to do more of that, and it'll
Yeah.
build on itself. There is a theory called broaden and build that I talked about at our mastermind, and it is this idea that when we feel good, we tend to be better problem solvers. We're more creative. We're more flexible in our thinking. And that only helps us bring in more good resources into our life, good relationships. Maybe we solve the problem at work that's been really bugging us, or maybe we bring in a spiritual answer to something that's been difficult. And as a result of that, we feel even more positive emotions. And then the whole cycle continues. So we're broadening as we build through this idea of magnifying, expanding good moments.
Yeah, this was the snowball, right? As it rolls, it
Yes,
gets bigger and
that's right.
bigger.
Yeah.
I think I intuitively was starting to practice this a couple of years ago, this idea that you're talking about of opening it and really feeling and asking questions of where and why. When we were living on the road, I actually started a hashtag called Gratiteers. And so I'm an empath and I cry at literally everything, but I found myself crying these tears of joy a lot. We would be like out in the Jeep and off-roading in the middle of nowhere. We're the only people the entire day. And Mike and I would just look at each other. It'd be a Tuesday afternoon and we're like, what is going on right now? This is crazy. Like, I'm so grateful. And I would get this huge wave of overwhelming gratitude that I would start to cry. And so I started sharing on social media. This is now almost 3 years ago, these moments that I would have of gratitude. And what I started doing, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but it sounds like I'm onto something. When I would have these moments of gratitude and overwhelming gratitude, I would then think about something that has not happened yet in my future. And I would imagine as if it was happening while I was in this overwhelming wash of just, holy crow, like this is all just happening right now. It's mine. I have it. And so I would kind of anchor it in using a present moment for a future memory.
And probably creating a clearer path to that future element that you wanted to bring into your life in that moment. And I think that's a perfect example of broaden and build
Mm,
happening right there. And we, it also speaks to cumulative effects of when we use our attention in this way. There's something that I'm calling 3-point layering, and that's when you're thinking about three different good moments around your day, from your day, and you're bringing them back to mind in succession, consecutively. So making my son breakfast would be an example. And then right after, thinking about that moment and why that was so powerful for me, bringing in the moment around having a good conversation with a colleague, which happened later in the day. And then later in the day, after that moment, bringing in the moment of enjoying a great deli sandwich at one of the top delis in the country, and having that time to quietly reflect about 2023 and where I wanted to go in 2023, into a values orientation in that moment.
cool.
Each moment in and of itself loses its power because it's separated by other negative events or neutral events or things that sap it of its energy. But if we're able to take those three little stars, right, and realign them together, the light that produces together, the layers of gratitude, joy, hope, excitement, optimism, shine so much more brightly. And I think we don't do enough of this kind of cumulative organization of our experience. And
Yeah.
if we did more of that, I think it's like fusion energy, versus
Mm,
another way of just like lighting a candle. Like
yeah.
we're really fusing two atoms
Yeah.
together, and wow, look what comes out of that. It's sunlight.
Yeah. Do you have days still now where it's harder to find those three things? Because, when you're having a bad day, a dark day, you're in a season, I feel that we can always find something. There was a little joy or gratitude, but the element that you're thinking of might not be as bright and glimmery
Yep.
or wonderful. So does that still happen to you?
Absolutely, all the
Oh,
time,
phew.
especially when it gets dark, especially when it gets dark out, and winter is not my favorite season because
Yeah.
I really enjoy the warmth, and that I tend to just normally feel happier in spring and summer seasons. I think what we can do, and it's a great question, and it's a great challenge that we face, is to expand the time frame of what you're looking at the pool of options. So
Okay.
if you need to go back 3 months and pull a moment from 3 months
Great.
ago
Yeah.
into those 3 points, um, absolutely do it. And we have what I talk about in the book as lighthouse experiences, lighthouse moments. And these are hugely bright, positive emotional experiences, moves to a new city, getting married, graduating. Like those might be some example of lighthouses. They carry such an intense, powerful, positive energy that even though they happened like 4 years ago, you can bring them back in and they'll almost
Sure.
shine just as brightly. So that's another method. Like if you're feeling like, I look at the past couple of weeks, I'm really not finding anything to spark me. That's what I could suggest.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's so good to hear because we have those days, we have those weeks, and it's so easy to continue down that negative spiral. This is so good. I can talk to you all day about this. I'm so grateful that you've given away so much of what's actually inside your book. So, before we get into a couple rapid fire questions, where can people find you? What are you working on? How can they get your hands on the book? We'll put it in the show notes, of course. But if they want to work with you in your course, where are you on social media? Let us know.
Yeah, so a great way to reach me is through my website, scottglassman.com. If you're interested in taking a Happier You, you can just go to ahappieryou.org and sign up for individual coaching through the program.
Awesome.
On social media, you can find me at Scott David Glass. I'm most active on Instagram, so please uh, connect with me there. Jump into my DMs, and I would love to talk with your audience more. It's just a great opportunity to meet new people and hear new perspectives and help in any way that I can. So thank you
Awesome.
for asking about that,
Yeah.
Jess. I
Yeah,
really
of
really
course.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, aside from your book, what are you currently reading?
So right now I've been diving into different articles because I'm the other thing that I do, you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, is I'm the director of a Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at PCOM, and I'm constantly reading different articles related to positive psychology. So articles on gratitude and love, and these are but right now that's kind of what I've been diving into. But my
Yeah.
favorite book is Man's Search for Meaning. So if there's
Mm,
one book that folks listening might be interested in, like what's one book that really could change my life and really stimulate some transformation for me, it would be Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Really
awesome.
powerful journey into how can my life feel more purposeful? Like what
Yeah.
are some pathways into that? Yeah.
Cool. I actually have not read that one, and I'm a very big reader. I've heard of it, haven't read it, so I just wrote it down right now. So thank you for that. What did
Awesome.
you want
Yeah.
to be when you grew up? When you were about your son's age, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be an archaeologist. I
Ooh,
was fascinated by relics and
Indiana Jones.
history and Indiana Jones. Yes, of course, and Indiana Jones. I got the archaeology magazines, and I was really thinking that would be a course for me. Then I wanted to be an astronomer. So
Sure.
there's a theme here, like of like wonder, awe, mystery. I think
Yeah.
that's carried through in a lot of different ways, not just like kind of reflected inward into psychology and in internal life. But I remember
Yeah.
taking this astronomy course and just being so excited that I could find where different nebulae were and yeah, constellations and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not that far off. You're basically an archaeologist of the mind.
Thank you for saying that. Uncovering relics and then looking to the
Yeah.
future too. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. So it all came to be.
it did.
What's a
Different
really
ways.
great piece of advice you've ever been given?
Great piece of advice I've been given is get in touch with your inner world. Really like listen to yourself more fully. My aunt, who is one of the most special people in my life, has always had a spiritual grounding in who she was. And thankfully, she's been with me on my journey since I was a little kid, and we've had a lot of time that we've spent together. And she's always redirecting me into the soulful aspects of existence. And so, look within. There are great answers, and there are great new mysteries and great truths that you would otherwise miss if you didn't look.
Oh, she sounds like a brilliant woman. Thank you for sharing a piece of that with us. I've got two more for you.
Okay.
If this is hypothetical, if I were to cut you a check tomorrow for $50,000 that you had to use for the business, your business, you could break it up if you wanted to, you can use it any way you want. How would you use that 50K?
I would start or expand actually, because we've started from a sports psychology perspective of building a Happier You program for youth athletes.
Mm.
I would create a seed program for schools to start teaching positive psychology at the elementary school level all the way through middle school. I think it's so important for kids nowadays to be grounded in positive ways within themselves when they're taken out of themselves by so many different directions and by social media and all of the negative forces that are pulling on them. So if I could use that money to really start that process, that would be really fantastic.
Oh, well, if you're listening right now and you have any way to help or someone to connect Scott to, please do, because that is so, so, so needed. And that is something that I wish that I had. I mean, I was a competitive gymnast, 30, 40 hours a week of training, doubles in the summer, my entire life. And my parents took me to a sports psychologist, and it just, the pressure, and we didn't have social media at the time and all of these other things that are distractions. So I couldn't agree more. I love that. So we named the podcast and the business Digital Business Evolution because we believe that you're always evolving and growing. And every time that you do, your business does as well. So I do believe that your business is a reflection of you and your growth. I'd love to know, what is your next either personal or business evolution?
So I would say the next piece of my business evolution is really expanding our Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at PCOM. We're in our first year. It's super exciting. We have 10 fabulous students who are excited about learning all of what we know from the field of positive psychology and applying it. And whether they're applying it from a coaching perspective or other perspectives, it's really exciting to see that grow. And so that's kind of my mission right now, is to see that expand. And my secondary one is to really see our Happier You program expand to lots of youth athletes across the country. So we're starting with soccer, but there's possibilities with other sports, and being a competitive gymnast and in your past, kind of knowing the kind of pressure and perfectionism and negative forces that come to bear when you have such high stakes, performance driven living, as part of your athletic pursuit. So Happier You has maybe a nice journey ahead of it in that direction.
Yeah. Incredible. Scott, thank you so much for being here. This was just a wealth of information and knowledge. And I know I'm going to go back and listen to the episode again. And I'm just so grateful that you poured into me again. And now our audience gets to, hear from you. So audience listeners, you know the drill. The best gift that you can give back to Scott, aside from obviously going and buying a copy of Happier You, is to take a picture, take a screenshot, let us know you were listening to the episode, share it up on Instagram, tag me at I am Jessica DeRose, and most importantly, tag Scott at Scott David Glass. Let him know what you loved, what your takeaways were, or more importantly, what your action steps are moving forward. Grab a copy of the book.
10% discount. Like, I don't know if we were going to go for an offer for your audience, a 10% discount on the course itself. So if you mention DBE when you sign up, you will get 10% off.
Incredible. Oh my gosh, 10% off on the Happier You program. That is incredible. So we'll put that in the show notes too. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for being here.
I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk with you again, Jess. You just illuminate, with your presence, with your being, and helping so many people through your podcast and through DBE. It's been an honor, and I hope we get to talk again. It's been so much fun.
It has. I'm super grateful. Listeners, as always, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.